Okay, so for the passive and dynamic hip internal rotation stretch, this can look very different for different people. So I'm going to show you first how to get into the stretch and also what it will look like if you have a limited range of motion or if you've got an advanced and large range of motion. So we want to start lying down with our knees bent. And what you're focusing here is your hips want to be basically steady and flat and not twisting off to one side. They might twist off into one side as you first get into the stretch, but just make sure you then go back into neutral. So the way I'm going to get into the stretch is I'm simply going to go out with this foot so I get into my hip internal rotation. I'm going to use the weight of this other leg to push down. And now as I'm doing this, I'm ever so slightly twisting my hips and my spine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, from this position, go into the stretch, breathe out, nice long deep breath, and my hips are now going to be back to being level. I'm now going to feel this on the outside of my hip or in my hip. You can even feel it underneath the leg sometimes, and even sometimes in the muscles here. And we're just going to hold this passively for the allotted amount of time, taking nice deep breaths. And if you've got the dynamic stretch in your program, then simply what you're doing is coming out of that deep stretch, taking a nice long breath out and going into your stretch, and then back up. So that's what it looks like when the range is relatively large. If your range is lower, that's fine. The most important thing is that you feel the stretch. So here I'm just simply placing my foot out a bit less, and I'm allowing the other leg to push my leg down and get that stretch from the range that I do have access to. Also paying particular attention to keep my hips steady and not twisting off into a side in order to give the illusion of range rather than the range coming straight from the femur inside the hip socket.